Sticking with Facebook, Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli spoke with Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey to hear about why they're working on bipartisan legislation to regulate digital currencies.
Well, the Token Taxonomy Act is something that we started working on. It's a nonpartisan bill that provides regulatory clarity. And what went over well with some of my Democratic colleagues is they finally found a Republican that's for regulating something, right? And the reality is the companies that are leaving the United States of America aren't leaving to avoid regulations. They're leaving to find legislative certainty. And that's a big part of why Facebook's launching Libra in Switzerland.
So what specifically would this legislation do?
And this point that the Congressman is making, which I think is very important, is about the certainty, right? I mean, I think the key is when we've heard from a lot of businesses that have come into a lot of startups who are in our offices saying, hey, I'm going to other countries like Facebook, going to Switzerland, going to other places because we don't know who our regulator is. We don't actually know how this is going to roll out, what's going to happen down the road. And we can't, it's very hard, as you know, to make a business decision if you have no certainty, no regulatory certainty. So they're actually coming and saying, can you please actually tell us the rules of the road here? Who do we actually have to get our direction from so we understand the framework for how we operate? And that's where the Token Taxonomy Act comes from. And, you know, and really it's a great bipartisan effort. All this is about is making sure that American businesses can be successful here, that we can have growth here in this sector that's burgeoning. We've always done incredibly well in the tech sector. There's no reason why we're not now.
I think one of the other big things is if Congress fails to act, the reality is the best way to protect consumers is to close the information gap. Fraudsters love big gaps in information. It's an asymmetry, so they understand it. People get that it's kind of hot. And consumers are often the victims of fraud here. So we need legislative certainty if we're going to protect consumers. We need legislative certainty if we want to protect the investment in the United States and, frankly, even the innovators. So it's something that, with Libra launching, it's finally got work that we've been doing for close to 2 years now up to the radar. Oh, that's why it's such a big deal. And so hopefully this hearing will push the momentum to get the certainty that the market needs.
So what specifically would the bill do for a company like Facebook that's launching Libra?
Well, so what we go through, besides making through clear definitions of actually what counts in this space, what falls under it, but it then says, okay, who do you have to work with here? So the FTC, the CFTC, making clear those are places that are actually going to have oversight and responsibility and actually help develop the rules of the road. You know, I'm sort of a person who believes that we should get rid of unnecessary regulation. You know, there's no reason to have out-of-date regulation in the books, and there's a lot of it going back. These are only places where you're looking at, you've got old rules that don't make any sense for the new world, the new economy, and that's what we're all focused on, is how do we actually make sure that we have a new framework where people can operate and keep the jobs and growth here. We've led the world in the apps economy in the United States. My fear is, and you see this actually with Facebook, is that other companies are saying, well, since we don't know here, we're going to have to know what the rules of the road are here, we're going to go elsewhere where we have that certainty, and we're losing jobs, we're losing investment, losing businesses, and we both agree that's nothing, we just can't afford to have that.
So it sounds like there's from the market perspective, as both of you are alluding to, that there's a bit of a regulatory turf war going on in terms of the tech sector, in terms of the private sector, and that this bill would help alleviate it.
Absolutely. So the SEC's issued a number of pieces that are guidance, but they're not clear rules. And frankly, they're not binding. So investors and companies that are launching startups don't have certainty that even something that isn't initially deemed as security won't eventually be deemed as security. And the SEC has been resistant to putting that certainty out there to the point where they tell literally every company, come check with us. Well, you can't company by company come check with you and then somebody changed and now you get a different thing. You don't need a patchwork of legal decisions. You need to know if you meet this criteria, you're not a security. You might be a commodity, you might be a good or a service, and tokens can represent all those things.
Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey there with our own Kevin Cirilli. Coming up, our exclusive